my new book, Head, Hand, Heart, is essentially about the struggle for status and dignity in the 21st century. We have become too educationally stratified in recent decades. We've allocated too much prestige and reward to one of those three sets of aptitudes, and that is cognitive ability. Cognitive analytical ability has become kind of the gold standard of human esteem in many rich Western societies. And that is, I think, one of the factors underlying the mass political alienation we've seen in recent decades. We also have, and indeed the two things overlap, big value divides that have emerged partly along these lines of educational stratification. My last book, The Road to Somewhere, I talked about the people who see the world from anywhere, people that see the world from somewhere. This book, it sort of takes the argument one step further on and tries to understand how it is that so many of our fellow citizens feel that society is not providing them with the status, the prestige, the meaning, perhaps that they seek, and I do think that this has a great deal to do with not only the excessive focus on just one form of human aptitude and the way that has dominated our politics and our economy and our culture. You see it absolutely everywhere, and so much contemporary public policy, the huge expansion, I would argue, over-expansion of higher education, the focus, the overwhelming focus in our lives on the public realm and the kind of diminishment of the private realm of care and nurture, the disappearing status of the value of work as a sort of virtue in its own right, in all sorts of different ways. And I think one of the most important things that's happened as an expression of these new relationships that many people feel are not really working for them, one of the most important things that has happened is that we've even narrowed the definition of what it is to lead a successful life. To lead a successful life now, you have to pass exams when you're young, you have to go to a more or less good university, and you have to have a more or less successful, usually cognitive biased professional career. Not everybody can or wants to do that by definition, and it would be a disaster for our economies and societies if everybody did do that. There are vast numbers of things that need to be done that don't fall into that category. Moreover, we have in recent decades created a kind of single funnel into that zone of sort of safety and success. We've created a single funnel, and that single funnel is the modern university. If you go back 30, 40 years, there used to be many more sort of little ladders. There's one big ladder up there. There used to be lots of little ladders up. It was possible to get, if you hadn't done very well at school but were pretty able, there was promotion from below was still possible in large organisations. That has largely disappeared. If you don't have a degree or even a postgraduate degree, you can't get into those organisations, at least into the top ranks of them any longer. And the system has become self-perpetuating in a way. About 40% of jobs in our society are now graduate only, and the number of them are growing. The proportion of them are growing. So, if you are an anxious parent or a kid of 16, 17, 18, of course you're going to see the path to university as the only one, as the only show in town, really. If you want a decent job, that is now what you have to do. Meanwhile, of course, I think we are overproducing. Obviously, we need high intelligence. It goes without saying. I mean, this is not a book that is attacking intelligence at all. We need high intelligence. We need teams of highly intelligent people, cooperating across national boundaries through the internet and so on to come up with a vaccine for COVID-19 most immediately, but also to solve many of our technical and environmental problems, to find some way of sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. So it's not an argument about that at all, but it is an argument about how we've created, outside of the sort of the elite band of highly able people across lots of different professions. There is a huge, great sort of bloated cognitive bureaucracy of people of perfectly able people, but people mainly of kind of sort of middling ability, who are probably no more bright than most of their non-graduate peers, and yet society is increasingly designed for them. And as I say, this single path into higher education is the one that is most clearly signposted. It's simple to understand. It's still easily the most highly subsidized form of post-school education, even despite high tuition fees. And meanwhile, we have enormous skill shortages amongst skilled trades, amongst the middling technical functions that are required to make the whole system work, to make the boiler in your house work, to make nuclear power stations work, lots of those middling technician type jobs that don't necessarily require a degree, but require those sorts of, in the jargon of international education, those sort of level 4, level 5 technical qualifications. And we're producing fewer and fewer people doing those kinds of qualifications. Hundreds of thousands of people used to do HNDs and HNCs every year, and now it's down to a few tens of thousands, if that. And we also, of course, have huge recruitment crises in care jobs, in nursing and care. I think 30, 40,000 nurse shortages in the NHS. That was prior to the pandemic. I'll come on to this later. I think the pandemic is nudging us in some of the directions that I want to see in terms of the redistribution of status across head, hand and heart. So we have recruitment crises in nursing, even bigger recruitment crises in social care. We have a huge future demand for specialist dementia nurses, and currently we're not meeting those needs. So we've got out of kilter. We've got things that we've got the rewards to those clusters of different human aptitudes out of kilter. Now, of course, I should also emphasise, to talk about head, hand, and heart is of course an abstraction. I mean, everything we do is a combination of brain and emotion and body, obviously. But I still think it's quite useful to as a sort of heuristic device to abstract, and certainly there are jobs that draw on some of those aptitudes more than others. So we've got out of kilter, and it's going to become even worse in the sense that it turns out that the knowledge economy doesn't actually need very many knowledge workers. We're seeing that, even before the real surge of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has already arrived around the edges, and lots of different cognitive functions are now being replaced by, automation did for blue collar jobs. AI is increasingly going to do for at least the kind of middling and lower level brain jobs. So there will be fewer jobs. There will be fewer head jobs with real cognitive content, as it were, because, as I say, the knowledge economy doesn't actually need that many knowledge workers, and we're seeing that already, even prior to the arrival of AI on a large scale. We're seeing it in things like the decline in the graduate income premium. It's down in the UK. It's down to, if you take into account pre-graduate qualifications. So if you compare someone with the same A levels, one goes to university, the other doesn't. The premium for the person that goes to university, particularly for males, is now below 10%. We're also seeing a huge proportion of graduates who are not in graduate employment even 10 years after graduating, and that's given a pretty elastic definition of what a graduate job is. So we've got things out of alignment. We're producing lots of people. We expanded higher education to produce the kind of middle and lower ends of the cognitive class. Many of these jobs are not actually going to exist in the future. So we've got a skill misalignment. We've also, I think, in a way, got a political misalignment, because we're creating a huge crisis of disappointed expectations amongst the people who, young people who feel that they have done what was asked of them. They've worked hard. They passed their exams. They've gone to university, and they have expected to move smoothly into high status and relatively high paid professional employment. But the proportion of that employment in the total labour force has been pretty static.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.